All right, guys. Welcome to welcome to chapter 11 on personality. So today we'll be diving into what creates persona and what lies in personality. Um, okay, let's just go. Let's start in honestly. So personality. What makes two individuals have different personalities? What is a personality? Personality are long-standing patterns that propel individuals to inconsistently think, feel, behave, and act in specific ways, and we'll dive down more into why persona can be sort of formed or why persona can be pretty much manifested based off different factors. But personality comes from the Latin word persona, which was in ancient times. Persona was a way that they depicted emotions within acts. So they wore these masks to depict how actors felt at the moment. So happy, sad, impatient, shy, fearful, curious, helpful. What characteristics describe your personality? Y'all could tell me in the comments. So, Hippocrates actually proposed these four types of personality traits, but he actually derived them from more of the physiological functions that we perform. So, cholergic was obviously the bile that comes from the liver, the yellow bile that comes from the liver. Melancholic was the black bile that comes from the kidneys. Um, Sanguine was red blood cells from the heart or erythrocytes from the heart. Phlegmatic was the phlegm on the lungs or from the lungs, the white phlegm from the lungs. But Galen actually proposed ideas that underlie these sort of physiological functions, and he proposed that they have emotions sort of connected to the physiological functions. So these were believed both the diseases and personality differences could be explained by imbalance in the humor, and that each person exhibits one of the four temperaments. So a prevalent view for over 1,000 years and through the Middle Ages was that caloric was more energized. Caloric was more. Oh, I'm gonna do this. They were propelled, more ecstatic. Caloric was just seen as that energetic boost, and how I think of caloric is um, calories, which can be or cholesterol is going to be late turned energy, or it could turn into adipose tissue. It could turn into low density and or high density cholesterol, and I think of those as energy sources. So I kind of sort of made a liation between the actual physiological function of cholesterol and caloric, the emotion. So next would be melancholic. Melancholic is more anxious, more reserved, just more not outgoing. They'd probably be like your sort of epitome of an introvert. Next we have sanguine, which sanguine is actually a pretty happy person, pretty delightful, pretty optimistic, pretty eager. Next we have phlegmatic. Phlegmatic was pretty apathetic, pretty neutral. They're just pretty neutral on things. They're calm, mostly more reliable and intellectual. Um, Next, we have the history of phrenology, which phrenology was a cool concept actually within neuroscience. So phrenology was this sort of I'd like to summarize phrenology. Well, I'll read this first, then I'll summarize it. So, proposed that the distances between bumped skulls reveal person's personality, traits, characters, and mental abilities. Discredited for the lack of empirical support. Gao developed a chart depicting where the areas of the skull correspond to particular personality traits and characteristics. An 1812 lithograph depicts Gao examining the skull of a young woman. So basically, phrenology was just this pseudoscience that believed that there were bumps on the brain, and bumps on the brain were kind of sort of they most likely derived their sort of opinion or their ideology on the bumps on the brain from the muscles, how we work out muscles and muscles expand to accommodate from all the stress that we put on our muscles. So I think maybe neuroscientists or phrenologists, my bad, thought of these bumps on the brain as sort of muscles that we can strengthen and that we can hone over time, and then it precipitates our personality, and it starts our emotions in certain areas. That's most likely what phrenology was sort of placed on. So historical perspectives. Um, so this was the diagram based off sanguine, cholergic, phlegmatic, and oh my god, I was about to say the same thing. Sanguine, cholergic, phlegmatic, and melancholic. Um, so Immanuel Kant actually agreed with the individual four places of this diagram. He believed in this. He believed in the four temperaments to develop a list of traits to describe someone's persona. So, William Wundt, which is pretty much the founder of psychology, emotional and non-emotional, he actually divided this diagram into non-emotional, weak emotional, strong emotional, temperament or changeable temperament, and unchangeable temperament. So he separated strong emotions like melancholic and caloric from weak emotions like phlegmatic and sanguine. Changeable slash unchangeable divided the changeable temperaments cholergic and sanguine from unchangeable ones like melancholic and phlegmatic. So, like we described before, melancholic was described as an unchangeable temperament. Um. Oh wait, no. Yeah. Melancholic was deemed as a strong emotion and also deemed as an unchangeable temperament. So, melancholic was anxious, worried, unhappy, suspicious, serious, and thoughtful. Phlegmatic was reasonable, principled, controlled, persistent, steady, and calm. So, like I'm saying, I would think of phlegmatic as a businessman. I would think of melancholic as an anxious little boy, maybe in adolescence or a prepubescent boy. Cholergic, excited, ego-centered, ecstatic, excitable, excitable, exhibitionist, impulsive, histrionic, active. And if you don't know what histrionic is just dramatic, pretty much. Playful, easygoing, sociable, careful, hopeful, and content. So, like I was saying, weak emotions were actually put under this side on the bottom, while the unchangeable temperaments were put on the left, and the changeable were put on the right, and the strong emotions were put on the up top. So next we have psychological perspectives in the 20th century. So Sigmund Freud was the first comprehensive theory of personality with both normal and abnormal behaviors. Obviously, Sigmund Freud proposed a psychosexual theory of personalities, and there were also neo-Freudians that agreed with the childhood emphasis that he saw, but they had less emphasis on psychosexual characteristics. So, we talked about this in the last video. Ego, id, ego, and superego. So since I talked about it in the last ego, I'll just go through it pretty quickly. So ego is just mainly the balance between the id ego and the superego. Id ego acts for gratification, acts for transient gratification, and superego acts for the long-term virtuous nature, the more ethical, the more philosophical nature of your being. This is how I would describe superego, or you could describe it as the angel on your shoulder, and id ego as the devil on your shoulder. And the Freudian slip was actually proposed as some sort of instinctual, subconscious outlaying of what you truly felt or how you truly feel. So I'd say, I'd say I do the Freudian slip a lot. I'd say sometimes I do this Freudian slip. An example can be like, maybe you're talking to your person, or maybe you're talking to your boss, and you're like, oh, God, I hate this guy. And then you're like, oh my God, I didn't mean to say that. Or like, God, oh, I hate this dude. And then you didn't even mean to say that, but that was just your true instinctual emotions or subconscious. So yeah, id ego, super ego. So let's go more in depth just in case anybody didn't understand. So id ego contains primitive, impulsive, and instinctual desires. They operate from the pleasure principle. So obviously, id ego is going to be attracted to physiological functions like sex, sustenance, and other transient gratifications that are just more of the primitive gratifications within our more primitive mind. So super ego is our more virtuous nature. I'd like to think of super ego as our forebrain, our rational nature. If I was saying this in a structural sense, but ego Ego is just like I was saying, balance rationality operates on the reality principle, meaning it tries to satisfy the ego while also being pretty virtuous and pretty rational. Um, Super ego strives for perfection. The judge behavior leads to feelings of pride or guilt. So let's go to the next one. So yes, my favorite, defense mechanisms. Let's explain defense mechanisms. So defense mechanisms are unconscious protective behaviors that work to reduce anxiety. They're used by the ego to restore balance between id and superego. Freud believed them to be used in everyone, but that people that overuse them could end up in a more problematic situation. So denial is obviously, a lot of people know denial. Denial is refusing to accept, maybe refusing to accept something that you do, pretty much. Kind of, I like to also kind of like really connect it with rationality, because we kind of, honestly, some people kind of confuse denial with rationality, but it's sort of it's sort of trying to discard a negative event and sort of imprint it or hold this facade about it being positive. So we're gonna say that I do narcotics, I do drugs. This helps me. This reduces my anxiety. This binds up to my GABA receptors, and this makes me more lenient, more lackadaisical, and more sociable. I'm gonna keep doing drugs. I'm gonna keep doing this because it makes me feel good. It helps my social life. So next we have displacement. Displacement is taking anger out on someone, pretty much taking anger and then outlaying that anger, or putting that anger, directing that anger, or displacing that anger towards someone else who you deem as less detrimental. They're going to be less detrimental to your reputation, so you're going to take that anger and you're going to put that hostility on somebody else because you deem that they're not worthy enough to really impede on your credentials. So if my boss was to yell at me, I'd displace that anger towards my girlfriend or something, or my wife, or my sister, or my dad, or I don't know, my mother. So projection is simply projecting your feelings onto someone. Most prevalently seen through jealousy. A lot of people like to project when they're jealous, or maybe when they're even cheating. Are you cheating on me? You're cheating on me. Blah blah blah. This that. That's projection. Rationalization. I was talking about rationalization earlier. Rationalization is some sort of innate feature that we do. Although coming with the forebrain is pretty cool, we typically also try to rationalize um, things that aren't positive. You know, so I'm gonna say, oh, this is good. My dad does it. Oh, doing drugs is fine. It's in my family. Oh, doing drugs is good. It doesn't have that much of a detriment. I didn't get lung cancer yet. That's rationalization. Reaction formation. Reaction formation is having the opposed feelings to what you truly feel. This can either be to assimilate with society, more of affiliation, or it could be opposed feelings in a cunning or beguilement behavior. So you could maybe want to get close to somebody, have opposite feelings, and you could get close to them just to deceive them and do something else. This was really prominent. This is prominent in a lot of movies. You'll see a lot of deceptive people in movies use reaction formation, much like in American Psycho, when Patrick Bateman was with that one guy. I don't remember his name. But well, next let's go to regression. Regression is just acting in a childlike manner. So whining, jumping around, throwing your fists, maybe slamming doors, just rolling around like you're a child, basically. Repression is sort of repressing your feelings and bringing them into the unconscious to the point where you can forget. Now I say this every time. It can be positive or negative. It's positive if it's positive because it can drive you away from that sympathetic nervous system. That sympathetic nervous system long term is going to lead to detriments, and it's going to lead to burdens. So you're going to want to drive away from that sympathetic nervous system. But it's also kind of bad because interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence can be ruined because you have no knowledge of something that's scaring you or something that's causing you fear or trauma. You don't have an understanding of yourself and what caused you this trauma. So if a lot of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm pretty sure they focus on bringing back those repressed feelings and sort of making it positive, making sure you know who you are and making sure you know why you're feeling these feelings. Sublimation, one of my favorite defense mechanisms. Sublimation is going to the gym, maybe let me define it. Sublimation is pretty much just doing something and making it and turning it into a more socially acceptable thing. So, or taking anger or taking any emotion and turning it into a socially acceptable thing. So if I get smacked, if I don't know, if I get bad grades, or if I don't know, if I don't do my chores and my mother yells at me, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna go do martial arts, I'm gonna go practice my boxing, I'm gonna go relieve my stress in sports, or it doesn't even have to be sports, it can be drawing or something, to just relieve your stress in a more sociable, in a more better way. Stages of psychosexual development. So this was a Freudian thing. I'm not sided with the Freudian psychosexual development, but a lot of people don't like to go in depth with this, so I will go in depth with. I won't go super in depth, but I'll read off the slide just so you can understand. But I honestly think it's really weird. But I mean, obviously Freud has pretty relevant theories, and this was a relevant theory at the time, but I'm pretty sure now it's getting pretty much debunked. But still, let's dive into it as much as, yeah. But in each stage, pleasure-seeking urges the id are focused in different erogenous zones of the body. Lack of proper nurturing and parenting during conflicts result in a person becoming stuck and fixated. So oral stage, birth. This is the erogenous zone. This is pleasure from eating and sucking, from the nipples. Major conflict, being weaned from a bottle or breast, and adult fixation like smoking, overeating, and nail biting. Anal stages 1 to 3, erogenous zone, anus, pleasure from bowel and bladder movements, and major conflict, toilet training, adult fixation, anal retentive of personality, stingy, stubborn, need for order, neatness, and an explosive personality, messive, careless, disorganized, prone to emotional outbursts. So, the phallic stage, which is from 3 to 6 years old, the erogenous zone in the genitalia, major conflict, child feels a desire for the opposite sex parent, and jealousy for hatred towards the same sex. So Oedipus, Oedipus, I don't know why I can't say that, this Greek god. Oedipus complex, boys desire their mother's attention and the urge to replace the father, and they're afraid of being punished by the father for those feelings. This is castration anxiety. The Alexer complex is in girls, and its desire for the father's attention and the urge to replace the mother, and angry at the mother for not providing them with the penis, which is called penis envy. Adult fixation, vanity over ambitious. Latency stage 6 to 12, erogenous zones. Sexual feelings are dormant as a child and engage in periods of the same sex. Erogenous zones, genitals, sexual reawakening urges, and redirection from parents and more specific acceptable partners. Hold on. So focus on our drive to compensate for feelings of inferiority. So this was Alfred Adler in individual psychology. He believed that we did a lot of tasks. We had this inferiority complex based off social views and the environment and things of the sort. So, diving more into Alfred Adler, he believed that happiness can be found working together. He placed focus on social connections during childhood development. He viewed main psychology to be recognizing the equal rights of equal and equality of others. He saw conscious process as more important. He theorized birth in order to shape our personality. And Adler identified three fundamental tasks, which were societal tasks such as affiliation and friendship, relational task or love task, which was obviously intercourse, sex, and having that intimacy with someone else, and occupational task, which is careers and jobs. So Erik Erikson, which is one of my more favorite psychologists now, actually, just because he developed this sort of 8-stage theory about what we go through in life, which really had a lot of self-reference to me personally, but he believed that personality develops throughout the lifespan. He emphasized importance on social relationships and developed the 8 stages of pretty much just the 8 stages of life. Next, Carl Jung. Carl Jung was an analytical psychologist. He developed three main things, and also also developed introversion and extroversion, which I'll go through later. So he developed the collective unconscious. This is the collective unconscious is the universe version of personality and conscious. So it's holding mental patterns or memory traces that are common to all of us. So the collective unconscious is more seen as that subconscious subliminal thing that lies in your mind that you can only sort of elicit if you have deep thought, deep rumination. While he also developed a series of archetypes, which patterns that exist around the world. You'll see archetypes as these sort of stereotypical roles that people play within movies or within reality, and these can be things like heroes will judge things in a universal perception about how things go, how someone is, and just different traits of someone's persona. So persona is a mask consciously adopted. So obviously, a lot of us adopt this sort of social facade that we have, and this sort of social conformity that we have. So we adopt this social mask and we wear it around people and just in public to sort of give us that conformity and give us that alignment and assimilation with other people. Um, and it's a compromise between the true self and the social expects for us, hiding the parts of the self that align. Like I said before, well, like I'm going to say, my bad, is a lot of social and a lot of masks that we wear can actually sort of impede on our true self, and that conformity can impede on our true self. But Carl Jung, let's go into extroversion and introversion. So Jung's most important contributions to the field of personality psychology were the ideas of extroversion and introversion that explain different attitudes towards life. So introversion was energized by being alone, avoiding attention, speaking slowly and softly, thinking before speaking, stays on topic, prefers written communication, pays attention easily, and is cautious. Extroverts are energized by being with others, seek attention, speak quickly and loudly, think out loud, jump off from topic to topic, prefer verbal communication, distractible, and acts first and thinks later. So I'm pretty sure we've heard of extroversion and introversion, so I might not need to really explain it. Oh my bad. So next we'll go into Karen Horney, who agreed with Jung that individuals have a potential for self-realization. So realizing the true self and sort of unlocking and unyielding that collective unconscious. So the goal of psychoanalysis should be towards a healthy self. She disagreed with the idea of penis envy, suggesting that any jealousy is culturally based. Differences in personality between men and women is culturally based, and men have womb envy because they cannot give birth. Many of Horney's theories focus on the unconscious anxiety. So normal growth can be blocked by basic anxiety stemming from three styles of coping used by children to relieve anxiety. So moving towards people is affiliation, more intimacy. So when you develop as an adult, you're going to be more sociable, you're going to be more intimate, and maybe more dependent on people, and loving and accepting. More against people, you're going to be more hostile towards people. You're going to be more assertive towards people, and you're going to grow a cunning exploitation sort of lash out, and you're going to be lashing out on people. Moving away from people was detachment and isolation. So you're going to be more alone, you're going to be more isolated, you're going to avoid social interaction when you become an adult, stemming from your childhood. So the behavior perspective, learning a person's personality focuses on the observable measurable phenomenon. So we learn in particular ways. Obviously, Skinner was the person who proposed operant conditioning, so he believed that we could learn and we could form our personality from a sort of operant conditioning, perspective. So he believed that personality develops over our entire life. He believed that personality can vary in experience for new situations. So he honestly see him like Erickson. He believed stages and personality, and he believed that different encounters could shape how your persona is formed. So Bandura agreed that personality develops through learning, but disagreed with the behaviorist approach because thinking and reasoning are important parts of learning. So social and cognitive theory, he emphasized that both learning and cognition as a source of individual differences in personality. Wait, hold on. Emphasize both learning and cognition as sources. So, okay, so social cognitive theory. So this was mainly learning and ideation can develop your sort of personality on something and how you depict something and how you form something. Observable learning, which is vicarious learning, learning through things and sort of shaping your persona through that. Maybe you've seen some sort of operant conditioning like punitive reinforcement and reinforcement, and you can, sort of shape your persona based off that. Self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is obviously just self-efficacy. Oh, I did skip something, but we covered self-efficacy in the last chapter. Self-efficacy was just the belief that you had motivation, the belief that you could do a topic, the belief that you could complete an endeavor, the belief that you could achieve a goal. If you have more self-efficacy, you can believe that you can grasp a goal, and you believe it's more palatable, more in your reach, so you're more motivated to actually start it and do it. Next we have, which I skipped, reciprocal determination. Which reciprocal determination is a sort of triangle thing that describes cognition, behavior, and environment, and it plays more of a role in those three. But I will go deeper into reciprocal determinism. So, reciprocal determinism was cognitive factors, behavior, and situational factors, and situational factors, environment, behavioral factors, how you behave, and cognitive factors, ideation. You're going to shape, based off your environment, you're going to start to shape your ideation, and your ideation is going to start to shape your behavior, and your behavior can start to shape the environment that you want, or that you desire to be in, or that you're more inclined or have more propensity to align with. Next, we have locus of control, which locus of control is more of your volition. So, internal locus of control versus external locus of control. Internal locus of control simply is just the volition, the will that life is formed, that you're the catalyst from life. You precipitate what happens throughout your life. You write down your path. External believes that it's more of maybe a genetic thing. Maybe it's more of where you were placed in the environment. Maybe it's not within your control. Maybe it's God's will. Maybe God precipitates how your life should bestow. Next, Walter Mischel, which Mischel actually developed this theory. Before I explain it, I want to say Mischel believed that more behaviors were situational. So within an environment that's more an environment that's more dangerous, more perilous, you're gonna have a different behavior. You're gonna be more cautious. You're gonna be more timid. You're gonna be more isolated. You're gonna maybe you're gonna be more phlegmatic, maybe in a certain environment. While in more of a safe environment, you're gonna probably be more caloric or calor. Oh my God, caloric. My bad. So that's pretty much how I like to look at Michelle's findings. So she said behavior is inconsistent across different situations, but consistent within situations. Behavior is consistent and inequivalent in situations across time. This data did not support the theory that a person's personality traits are consistent across situations. So the marshmallow study was a self-regulation study, aka willpower, or I'd like to let's say locus, just so you can truly consolidate what locus is. Let's say the marshmallow study was focused on locus, that volition. So this was the ability to delay gratification. Children were placed in a room with one marshmallow on the table, and they were told they could either eat it now or wait until the researchers returned. They could have two. This revealed that children in different levels have different levels of self-control. Children that led a more self-control waited for two marshmallows. In preschool, they were more successful in high school. Children that had poor self-control took the one marshmallow. In preschool, they were more likely to have academic and behavioral problems. Michelle's approach to personality: people use cognitive processes to assess situations in their own way and behave in accordance to their interpretation. So, humanistic approaches: Abraham Maslow studied people. He considered healthy, creative, and productive. Albert Einstein, Ian Roosevelt, and Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and found out that they shared similar characteristics: open to creative and longing, spontaneous, compassionate, concern for others, and accepting themselves. So Carl Rogers linked personality to self concepts like thoughts and feelings about herself. He divided the self into ideas. So actually, um, you know what's really funny? Now I watched a movie recently that really shaped ideal self and the real self. But I'll explain that after this. So he believed we needed to find congruence between the ideal self thoughts about the ideal self and the real self, and high congruence is a greater sense of self worth and healthy productive life. Incongruence is maladjustment. So like I was saying, I view ideal self and the real self was really depicted in Fight Club. If you ever watch Fight Club, you can see that Tyler Dirk is more of God, did I forget he's more of the main character's ideal self, while the main character is the real self. Tyler Dirk is the self that the main character wants to become. He wants to become smart. He wants to become intelligent. He wants to be a fighter. He wants to be a man. He wants to have a nice physique. He just wants to have it all. So I depict real self as Tyler Dirk and ideal self as the main character from Fight Club. So heritable studies in the Minnesota study of the twins reared apart, they found that identical twins, whether raised together or apart, have similar personalities. This suggests heritability within personality traits. Traits with more than 0.50 heritability ratio, leadership, obedience to authority, sense of well-being, alienation, resistance to stress, and fearfulness. Why I need to stop talking so fast. I'm stumbling over my words. But temperament appears to be early and suggests biological basis. Babies are categorized in 3 temperaments, which are warming up, negative, and positive. Let's go into them. So, positive temperaments are more temperaments that are more positive. You'll see positive traits like happiness, adaptation, more likely to align, more likely to accept, more open. While you'll see negative emotions more associated with neuroticism, you'll see anxious, maladaptability, and just inability to align, crying, and other stereotypical negative emotions that you can think of. Next we have warming up. Warming up is more phlegmatic, more apathetic, more neutral. So we're gonna see that the baby's just it's not really adaptive, more neutral, just needs to warm up pretty much. Next we have somatotypes. Somatotypes, you probably heard of somatotypes before. We have ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorphs. So they believe that somatotypes could actually shape your personality, and they said that endomorphs are more relaxed, more comfortable, more tolerant, more lackadaisical. So these people you'd say are more they have more of the phlegmatic nature. You know what I'm saying? More of the phlegmatic nature. They pretty calm, but they're not sanguine. They're not sanguine. Okay. So mesomorphs are adventurous, assertive, competitive, fearful, and ectomorphs are anxious, self-conscious, artistic, thoughtful, quiet, and private. So let's go back up to define ectomorphs, mesomorphs, and endomorphs based on the table, because just to make sure I don't get it right. So they said, let's say ectomorphs is more phlegmatic, melancholic is more anxious. So melancholic would be defined as maybe ectomorphs. Phlegmatic would be endomorphs, and sanguine would probably be mesomorphs, as defined from connecting the historical perspectives and connecting the somatotypes. We could see that we could form a neural connection, hopefully, and maybe we could understand these concepts more. So mesomorphs are adventurous, assertive, competitive, fearful. So I'd actually say mesomorphs are probably not as sanguine. I'd say they're probably more caloric. So yeah, I'd go on to that. So cardinal traits are traits that shape your personality, that manifest your personality, that create your entire personality pretty much. Oh no, they dominate your personality. Central traits make up your personality. They manifest your personality. They create your personality. Secondary traits are personality traits that are more subliminal, more unconscious, and probably more of your instinctual traits, actually. Raymond Cattle narrowed Alport. He listed that I forgot. Gordon Alport found 4,500 words in the English language to describe people, how people organize them, describe emotions and organize them into three categories. And those were cardinal, which cardinal traits, like I said before, is what dominates. Central is what makes it up. Secondary is more subliminal, more unconscious, more noticeable. Narrow output listed narrowed outports list to about 170 traits. This is what Raymond Cattell did. He identified 60 dimensions of personality instead of present, being, and present or absent people who are scored in the continuum. So Hans Sybil Eisnick focused on temperament and believed that our personality traits are influenced by our genetic inheritance. So specific personality dimensions: extroversion slash introversion, high in extroversion, more sociable, more outgoing. High in introversion, they needed alone, solitude, engagement, recluse, things of the sort. Neuroticism slash stability. High neuroticism, anxious, overreactive, sympathetic nervous system. High stability, more emotional and stable, or more emotionally stable. My bad. So Hans Sybil Eisnick. Eisnick described two factors on the account of variations on our personalities: extroversion slash introversion, and emotional instability slash stability. So yeah, I'm gonna like on this test. On this test, you're definitely probably gonna have to remember this diagram, because this diagram is really important. You can see it's actually in here like about 4 times, or three to 4 times. Oh no, is it? Okay, no, 2 times. Okay, yeah, see, but so he depicted introversion as more melancholic, more phlegmatic, and he depicted extroversion as more sanguine and more choleric. And he also depicted these unstable emotions as neurotic. And he depicted stable emotions like phlegmatic and sanguine as just stable, literally. And unstable were just melancholic, which pretty much makes sense. If you're touchy, restless, aggressive, excitable, impulsive, and active, that's more of a neurotic emotion. That's more of something that's uncontrollable or unstable. Melancholic, obviously, is pretty much the stereotypes for neuroticism. So ocean. I'm gonna try to spell this without looking at it. So openness is obviously gonna be how unveiling you're gonna be, how open you're gonna be to accept, doctrines, and pretty much how sociably you're gonna be. You're gonna be more social if you're more open. Next we have C, which is conscientiousness. Conscientiousness is just simply being more virtuous, like I was explaining, being more virtuous, being more thoughtful, being more philosophical, things of that nature. Next is extroversion. Extroversion is more sociable, more outgoing, just wanting to talk to people and speak to people. You're caloric. Next we have agreeableness. So agreeableness is gonna be how likely are you to you're gonna agree with someone. So agreeableness, if you're low in agreeableness, you're most likely gonna be mad. You're gonna not be accepting things. You're gonna be more dogmatic. You're gonna be more of a bigot. It's like how I'd like to picture agreeableness. And if you're more agreeable, you're gonna be more open, more accepting. Things of the sort. You're gonna be more trustworthy and good natured. So next on the list is neuroticism. If you're high in neuroticism, you're gonna have negative emotions like anxiousness, anxiety. You're gonna have depression, maybe sadness, incontrollability with emotions, instability of emotions, impulsivity, and more. Next we have hexaco traits, which hexaco was actually derived from the ocean traits, which hexaco is honesty and humiliation. I'm not looking at it, by the way. Honesty and humiliation is more of a humble being, somebody who's more humble, more down to earth, and they're going to be honest, and they're going to be more humiliative with how they truly are. Next is A, which is also agreeableness. Like I said before, you're going to be willing to accept doctrines. You're going to be more trustworthy. You're going to be more sociable and just more accepting of beliefs and notions. Next, you're going to be X, which is extroversion. Again, sociable, outgoing, etc. Next is A. Oh my God. No. Okay. Oh my God. I spelled it wrong. My bad. Hexaco. Hexaco. Gosh. So E is emotionality. Emotionality is going to be sort of having that controlling your emotions. Not having that controlling your emotions. More sentiment, more impulsive. You're just gonna be maybe have more composure to do things. You know how emotional people are. Agreement. I just went about on agreeableness. Conscientiousness, which is also respect, virtue, acceptable person. More universal doctrines. Um, Next is O, which is openness. Openness, like I was saying before, you're gonna be willing to accept, willing to agree, more creative, more inquisitive, and more innovative. Or innovative. So openness, I like to see as curiosity. Next. So next, cultural and understanding personality. So culture is just customs, traditions, what's been prominent throughout your environment, um, art, religion, things of the sort. Their personality traits can come from cultures. Um, Examples can be Asian cultures that are more collectivist, and Central and South African cultures that tend to score more on openness and experience, and Europeans that tend to have more neuroticism. So you can see collectivist cultures and individualist cultures. Next, we have regional differences. Regional differences can be really from selective migration, but researchers found that distinct regions, personality clusters in the United States, people tend to be friendly and conventional in the upper Midwest and the deep South, and relaxed, emotionally stable and creative in the West, and stressed, irritable, and depressed in the Northeast. So one explanation for this is selective migration. This is just viewing the statistics and the emotional perspective and the emotional personality that people have within regions, and they select this place on purpose to have a better environment. Next is individualist versus collectivist cultures. Individualists are more self-centered, more egocentric, more just self-focused. I want to say more narcissistic, but technically speaking, collectivist cultures are more aggregated, more socially accepting, more openness, more putting another person first before they put themselves first. This is prominent throughout Asia, Africa, and South America, mainly in Western nations such as the U.S. and England and Australia's individualist cultures. Next, we have the self-report inventories to screen applicants for employments and job training in criminal cases and custody battles. To assess psychological disorders, self-reports are objective tests that assess personality, often use multiple choice items or numbered scales like the Likert scale, but Minnesota multifaceted personality inventory, which is one of the most widely used personality inventories, originally developed to assess the diagnosis of psychological disorders. The newest version is 338 questions. It's scored on 10 scales. Hypochondriasis, in which hypochondriasis is just this sort of scare. You're being scared that you're gonna contract a illness. So hypochondriasis is just sort of having that fear that you're just gonna get intact with the disease. Next, we have depression. Depression, we know what that is. That's just like a perpetual sinus, pretty much perpetual sympathetic nervous system. Hysteria, which is just pretty much just not in tune with reality. You have this all these emotions. Your emotions are just hyper, like it's like hyper emotionality. It's uncontrollable. Um, so psychopathic or psychopathy, which is just inability to have that empathetic perspective or that empathetic emotional view. Next we have deviance, which I don't know what deviance is. I will search that up right now. I don't know what the deviance is. I will search that up so I don't give you guys a. Okay, so deviance is any behavior, belief, or condition that deviates from the norm and elicits a negative reaction within a particular group. So, pretty much some erratic, some eerie, or maybe esoteric emotion that someone exhibits that's just not culturally acceptable. Next, we have um, masculinity versus femininity. We know that paranoia, We know what paranoia is. Psychoasthenia, which psychoasthenia is in relation to bipolar disorder. So, obsessive compulsive disorder. My bad. It's actually more of an archaic term for obsession and compulsive disorder. Just so you know. So schizophrenia, we know schizophrenia is mainly prominent or mainly represented through hallucinations. Next we have hypomania, which hypomania actually is more connected with what's it, bipolar disorder. My bad, I mixed those two up. So, and then next we have social introversion. So we know what social introversion is. It's just social introvert, and we explained what introversion was multiple times. So, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next. So, like the Likert scale was just pretty much a scale that depicted emotions, and it was a multi-choice scale that it was just pretty much a multi-choice survey that was found to depict your emotions. If you ever taken a survey, you're probably familiar with the Likert scale. So these types they're also on the MMPI. These are true or false questions that resemble kinds of questions you would find on the MMPI. Oh shoot. So the Rosser ink block test is also on the MPI. In thematic apperception tests, individuals tell a story about 8 to 12 ambiguous cards, giving insight of their social world, revealing hopes, fears, and interests and goals. So the Ryder Incomplete Sentence Bank was individuals were asked to complete 40 incomplete sentences as quickly as they can to reveal desires, fears, and struggles. And this is pretty much just a representation. I feel, I regret, at home, my mother, my greatest worry. And then you answer the question. So that is the end of this Google slide, or well, not this Google slide, but this psychology chapter. Yes, I'm gonna hope I get a good grade on this, and I'm gonna hope you guys also get a good grade on this. If you guys enjoyed this, and please watch again. I'm probably gonna make these until I'm out of my psychology class, which is probably gonna be in like, I don't know, the farthest chapter for me is like chapter 20, I think. So, yeah. Okay, but thank you guys for listening, and peace out.